All right, great. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Today, we are really excited to have somebody on the show, someone who I really admire their work, someone who's also proven, that, the African continent can truly produce, spectacular works of art, especially in the NFT space. I'd like to introduce Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hello. Hi.
Yeah, nice to see you. I think most of you or most of our audience really know you as Kevin Kiggs, right? As an NFT artist who produces quite some spectacular art, I have to say, around mental health. Your work is obviously amazing. But let me not introduce you. Let me just give you the floor to sort of introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. My name is Kevin, or I go by Kiggs in the art space. I am a 3D artist and a graphic designer. I have been practicing freelance for many years, for very many years, and I stumbled upon the NFT space last year, and I got really convicted. I had been watching crypto for a while, but I'd never really gotten into it, mostly because of capital issues. Being broke, being a freelance designer in Kenya is a very, let's say, financially straining thing. So I had never explored the crypto space because I didn't have that seed capital. But with NFTs, I just saw this was a good chance to do something. It wouldn't need that much capital and so on. So yeah, in March, I minted my first NFT, and it didn't sell, and I struggled to make sales until somewhere around April. And then afterwards, I had to do
That's 2021, right?
Yes, that's 2021. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Wow. In 2022. Yeah. In 21. March 2021, and I didn't make a sale until April. But then in April, I realized that we need to have a sort of voice, and my main struggle has always been mental health, in both in terms of professionally and personally. I've always had a very strong bias towards issues that concern mental health. So NFTs now provided me a good platform to sort of be true to myself, make art that communicates how I feel or what I know, and to gain a bit from it, and to raise money for charities that help with mental health. Yeah, that's my introduction.
All right, great. I mean, yeah, thanks, Kevin. I think thanks for that. Now, because I've actually been looking at your work, and even some team members at BitKE, we were quite impressed when we were just looking at NFT artists who we can feature for the show. And obviously your work stood out in a big way. I don't know if you also get people on Twitter talking to you and telling you how they got inspired, because personally I think I got inspired. I know a team member from my team who said, when you meet Kiggs, just tell him, you really inspire them. So, I mean, do you get those reactions for your work?
Yes, I do a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think because for me, it's very hard to get full of myself because of this thing called imposter syndrome. We all
have it.
Yeah, it's tough. Some days I'll believe it, some days I won't. But at the end of the day, as long as that satisfaction of each that I know it has reached someone. It always makes me happy.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, especially when you're tackling an issue like mental health, this is something that affects people. You know, it's a real problem, right? And approaching that angle from an NFT perspective, I think was quite interesting for me. Now, Kevin, you know, when someone looks at your work, you know, there's quite a lot that one can think about. Now, what's amazing to me is, you know, how you've been able to remain consistent in tackling the mental health issue. I know the NFT space is big, it's booming. You guys make a lot of money. You know, I mean, can we expect you to still continue tackling the same issue, or would you also diversify and maybe also dive a bit into, you know, even inside mental health, what really inspires you? What aspects of mental health inspires your work?
Yes, I have always tried to make mental health at the very forefront of all the art I create. So, but I also really love experimenting. I do 3D art, and you know, 3D art it tends to be a mixture of creativity and technical stuff. And I really love both. Like I love the creative side and love the technical side. So I'm always releasing experiments and things like that. And it's actually been it's been really interesting trying to balance those two, you know, the mental health stuff and my own sporadic experiment. But yeah, mental health is still my voice in the space. But it'll always be.
All right. Kevin, what would you say was your big breakthrough piece of art where you realized, okay, I think this will gain traction? Or did you have that moment where you realized, okay, I think my art is really impacting people?
I think that would be my breakthrough piece of art. I think it would be the first mental health artwork I ever put on the blockchain. That was a piece on Foundation. It is called what? Sorry, I've forgotten the name. Okay.
Yeah, it was 1 year ago, yeah. So it's understandable.
Yeah, it's a piece I put on Foundation, and it was essentially depicting a man walking. It's like a black and white photograph. A man is walking very heavily and sadly, and around him the world is like bustling. You know, crowds are passing really fast behind him, and neon signs are flashing all over. And the description was a bright world full of dark souls. Everyone is happy. Everyone is alone. So yeah, when I released that, it was both talking about how I was feeling at the time, because I was pretty down bad, and at the same time I also wanted to equate it to, as in when I was making that work, I was like, this probably isn't a me issue alone. Everybody probably goes through this. So that was the whole idea of the artwork. You know, the artwork, the man who is walking heavily isn't me. It's everyone, which is also ironic because the crowd is also everyone else, but everybody is happy and everybody is alone. Yeah, so that was my since that piece wasn't a huge breakthrough in terms of like sales and impressions and all that. It was more of a personal breakthrough, because up to that point I had never been really sincere with my art. I had really focused on the technical and the experimental side. And this was now me being myself for the first time ever. Yeah.
All right. Wow. Okay. That's quite deep. I mean, it's always nice to realize, you know, I would almost call it an aha moment, right? Where
yes,
realize other people maybe can feel what I feel. They understand my art. I mean, I don't know if you remember, for how much has that piece of art sold so far?
Oh no, it's just the sale, when I put it up, it sold the exact same day. It was an auction, Foundation, and the person who bought it is a really big collector called Mondo. So when he bought it, that's it. You're not removing it from his hands. He has diamond hands. Yeah, and it was funny because I had never actually met him, or we hadn't like talked at all. He just followed me on foundation, and as soon as I dropped a piece, he had placed a bid immediately. I'm sure he just saw it and he was like, okay, yeah.
Okay. That's how that's how you know your work is great, right? When a big guy bumps in and he just takes it the moment he sees it.
Yeah. Oh, just remember the piece is actually called "Life is Awesome."
Life is awesome.
Yes. The title was like an oxymoron.
All right. Now, Kevin, obviously that was the start. You've dropped other pieces that have proven quite successful. Now I also know that you have a collection, right? You recently launched a collection. I think it was like 30 pieces. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that.
Which one specifically? The one to do with mental health or the experimental one?
Yes, so there's tell us the latest piece. I think you launched it on Foundation as well. I think it was on mental health.
Okay, so that was actually my second project. Since I joined the NFT space, I've only done three things. There was that first artwork, then second one was called the Faces collection. Now Faces was where I delved deeply into the whole mental health topic. I essentially created a story in my head that was involving different entities, let me call them entities or characters, that represented different aspects of mental health. So the first ones to release were called Faces. These were now based on disorders. You had some like depression, anxiety, things like that. And obviously the description was based on mental health. I like to write those small prose things. Like it's hard to explain, but yeah. And now how I built it was each disorder, all the artworks to come after it would be related to that disorder, and that disorder, all proceeds, part of the proceeds would be donated to a Kenyan charity that deals in similar cases, if that makes sense. So depression, for example, every artwork that came afterwards, there was always one that was linked to depression, the disorder in the face, and whatever donations would come from that would go to Befriend Us Kenya. Befriend Us Kenya is a hotline that does suicide prevention. Yeah. So Faces was now when I released it, I actually wasn't expecting, to sell quickly, because there were six artworks, and each had 10 editions. So that's a total of like 60 NFTs. So when I released them, I was just like, okay, you guys, please buy these. They're based on disorders, and I explained everything. And I just sat there, I waited for a week, made a few sales, and then one afternoon, they all sold in a span of like 1 hour. So it was a rush I had never felt before. And all of a sudden I had gone from this, this small artist who has sold one artwork to someone who has sold 60.
Indeed.
And it just, I don't know, it's something that just threw me off how fast, big, and loud the NFT space can be. Yeah, so those were the first artworks. They were Faces, they were called Faces, and they were based on disorders. So now what came next were artworks called Helpers. They essentially were based on coping mechanisms for the disorders. So there was one for each disorder. For depression, you had warmth, or let me say genuine love. Warmth presents genuine love, and things like that. And these ones were given out for free to people who had bought Faces at random. So that was something to sort of, it was a bit of a thank you, and at the same time to boost the secondary market. Because when I released the Faces, I had planned for them to have an active secondary market. I sold them for like really cheap, really cheap in Ethereum in Ethereum standards. And yeah, true to that, the secondary sales were quite a lot. I won't lie. After the free helpers, now came helpers which I was going to sell again. And these again were slightly linked to the faces, and they would also raise funds for charity. So it kept going on like that. The next drop were called felons. I gave part of them for free to people who had bought helpers. Felons were based on negative mental health factors, things like escapism, drug addiction, projection, all that. So the first batch I gave for free to the helpers. The second batch I sold them and raised funds again for Kenyan charities. And then the final ones were now called Ascents, which were essentially based on end goals of mental health treatment. You have things like approachability, balance, emotional balance, all that. So yeah, that project actually went for a very long time, from July 2021 all the way to December 31st actually. The very last day of 2021 was the day I was doing my last Ascent auction. And since then I haven't really been doing much. I've just been being active in the community and all that.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that breakdown, Kevin. I mean, it's quite nice to hear a lot of your work and a lot of your I actually didn't know that you have given out for free quite a lot of your work. I always for commercial purposes.
Yeah, I think early on I realized being an artist, you are essentially an infinite source of value. If you think, especially in the NFT space where everything is a bit more forgiving to artists than in real life. Someone like one of the big artists, let's say someone like Xcopy. Is it called Xcopy? If he were to choose to make an artwork today, that artwork would still sell for his normal selling price, which is somewhere around 100 Ether. And that means he technically can make an artwork today, and each of those would sell for 100 Ether until the end of time. Of course, that's not how it would work because of demand and supply, but theoretically, that's what would happen because he, as the artist, has value. That was what I leveraged in the Faces collection. I believed, it doesn't matter how much I give for free because I have infinite value in that. My value as an artist doesn't go out if I give out my art for free.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. When you give out, it's not like the value is diminishing, right? That doesn't happen among artists. Now, you recently launched another collection, which was quite interesting, the GM collection, right?
Yes.
Which is slightly different from your normal collections that you've been putting out. Can you tell us about that? What was the inspiration behind that as well?
Okay, so the GM collection it's completely different from mental health and everything, because now that's my experimental side, the side of me that likes tinkering with things and stuff. So I was recently learning what you call parametric 3D, which instead of going in and modeling and brushing things, you use maths and a lot of rules to build your scenes and animations. So that is the whole essence of GM. So throughout January this year, in 2022, I essentially took a break from minting NFTs, and every day I was making a new GM using that technique of parametric 3D. So most of the GMs, there's nothing that has been modeled by hand. It's all a lot of, let me say, maths and systems and all that. So it was really fun. I'm not going to lie. That was just me having fun with 3D, having fun with my toys. So right. I actually hadn't planned to release them. Oh, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, please proceed.
No, I hadn't actually planned to release them, but I was being pressured a lot by people. They were like, how are you refusing to give us GMs? Yeah, so I ended up releasing them, and I wanted to separate them from my normal work, which is on Ethereum. So I minted them on the Tezos blockchain, and they're actually really cheap. Each is around 10 10 tears, which is like, that's like 2,000 bob right now. And I don't expect them to sell fast. I don't really, the good thing with Tezos is it's a completely different ecosystem from Ethereum. There is no all that hype and the hyper capitalist market, everyone screaming for utility and all that. On Tezos, art is art. People who collect because they love it. So it was a nice escape from that rush of Ethereum. The gems actually still available right now, and almost all the money that I've gotten from them, I've just been using it to buy more art on Tezos.
All right. Can we expect more experimental work from you as well, like the GM collection?
Yes. Actually, that's the whole point of Tezos now. Tezos will be my my go-to blockchain for all my experiments and things.
Now you've been in the NFT space for pretty much about a year now. That's quite a lot of experience in NFT time, right? Now there are still a lot of people who are just getting in, and it's still early relatively. Now, when you look at other artists in Kenya, there are quite a few artists that we've seen come up, NFT artists. What's your view of that? What can people learn, for example, from your experience within the NFT space? Basically, what advice can you give to people who are getting in?
If you are an artist joining the NFT space right now, I just said be patient. That's the whole secret. Being patient and consistent. Because for me, for example, I joined in March and my first sale was in June. So that's 3 months, and that was during what we call JPEG summer, the time when every NFT collection that was coming out was selling out, and I was just watching all this happen, and I'm just like, why not me?
What's wrong with my art?
Yeah. So yeah, it's quite a lot starting out, but you need to learn to first of all block out the noise and focus on building good connections, because those connections are what will help you throughout the NFT space. Yeah.
Right. And now for beginners, there are people who don't have the experience that you have with 3D animation, which to me personally is quite cool. For those who don't have 3D animation, do you feel they can still get into the NFT space?
Yes, you can mint anything as an NFT, as long as you're an artist. It doesn't matter if you paint, you draw, I've seen people who throw sand on the wall and I don't know, all kinds of crazy things. And yeah, you as long as you have, it doesn't even have to be art, just any kind of medium of expression. I've even seen people who write poems, sell them as NFTs. Usually, as in the NFT is a page of a poem, and they're doing very well. Mm-hmm. So it's all inclusive. It's an open market, and the funny part is, I'm sure people, if you do something extremely unique, it will probably even sell faster than us traditional artists.
All right. It's interesting you call yourself traditional.
I know. Traditional NFT artists.
Indeed. Now, Kevin, also for people in the NFT space, or for people who are getting in, I know there are still a few things they need to look out for. I'm sure you saw recently with the phishing attacks on OpenSea, and a lot of NFT content being plagiarized. Are you afraid that your work might end up being plagiarized, or somebody getting credit for it? And also, what other aspects in the NFT space have you seen that people should be wary of, especially if they are getting started?
Number one is obviously wallet security. Crypto can be a dangerous place sometimes. You need to learn, like the first, even before you learn how to mint an NFT, you should learn how to keep your wallet secure. We've had Kenyan artists who what do you say? They joined the space, they minted their first NFT, they spent a few months promoting it, and then it sells, and then that money disappears because their wallet was hacked a few weeks ago, and someone was just waiting for money to enter, and then they removed it. So I mean, you can't tell people not to worry about wallet security. That's number one. And number two, content theft. Yeah, content theft I think it's a growing issue. It is a growing issue. But as of right now, because it's an open market, it's a bit hard to fight. But majority of the things majority of the people who have managed to stop those, it involving the community. So, again, your connections end up being what will save you in the future. There was an art thief who had been stealing art of Kenyan artists. As in, he was just copying them, like just saving them from Twitter or Instagram, and then posting them on OpenSea. And he even called himself Young Kev. I'm sure you know Young Kev, the artist.
Yes.
He had stolen Young Kev's art. He had stolen just like so many artists just from Kenya and Nigeria, and just put them there in a collection called Young Kev. So now you can imagine, because Young Kev is already quite known, he just had to scream on Twitter, like, guys, report this person, and he got reported and his stuff was removed. And luckily, because it was OpenSea, because OpenSea uses lazy minting, so when you create something, it isn't really created until it's sold. So when the account is removed, all those things just go with it. And we've had even crazier cases. There are times I think it was in July, I invited someone to audition, as in he had DM'd me asking for an invite, talking in Kiswahili, and I was like, this is a cool person. And then 2 weeks later, I discovered this guy is stealing the art of other people's artists and putting them on foundation. And this one had even gone further to create a Twitter page for himself, talking about how he's passionate about African art, and an Instagram page and a Discord. And all of this was just marketing his art and entering galleries and things like that. But it wasn't his art. He had just copied it from another artist. Like, he just removed it from the Instagram, put it on the blockchain. So that was actually really, that was one of the scariest things that I've ever experienced. I'm not going to lie, because he had used my trust. At that time, I hadn't met any other. He was a Tanzanian. I hadn't met any Tanzanian in the NFT space. We ended up taking him down, but that, at the back of my head, that's a scar that will never heal. That content theft is real, and we have to be careful of it. And especially, I think that this advice would mostly go to collectors and artists who are in a position to help others. There are so many times we find ourselves collecting or supporting people who have stolen art. So there has to be a certain level of awareness, red flags to look for, to check if someone is stealing art. And I'm sure in the future it's going to get a lot better, because we haven't even reached the phase where NFT platforms are needed to do a sort of know your customer KYC. That would obviously really help, because it's helped in the past. For back when Rarible was the main marketplace, it was very hard to steal art, because you had to. People mostly only bought from verified collections, and verified people had to share the behind the scenes of their art. In fact, so the reason that has become so rampant now is because many platforms they sort of skimped on that, your customer.
Okay, the KYC part has been missing.
The KYC part.
On the platform.
Yeah, it's been missing in that one. Sorry.
Right. It's interesting, because a recent report showed it's a feature on OpenSea they had to disable, right? When they released it, and 80% of the NFTs that were being minted were stolen pieces of art. So it's actually a big problem. Has any of your work, Kevin, been stolen, plagiarized at any one time?
No, I think it's very hard to steal moving art, because most of the art that we've been seeing being stolen is still, images that were saved or things like that. But you can't easily save a video. It might lose quality, it might be compressed and all that. But I've also seen people whose video art was stolen. So I don't want it to happen to me. Yeah, and I'm glad it hasn't happened yet.
All right. So now, Kevin, as we wind up, we've discussed quite a lot. Now, moving forward, and as your art continues to get popular, and obviously your name and you become famous, can we really look forward to you maybe? Because this is something that maybe a lot of people do. Can we expect you to play a bigger role in the NFT space? Are you looking at maybe expanding your influence or your reach or your work in other ways?
Yes, I'm obviously very open to that, but I also don't want it to come too quickly or it to mess with what I'm doing right now. So I've been not been very proactive, but I'm always open to, especially teaching people, because information is the most powerful. It's one of the most powerful tools in NFTs. Knowing what you can do and how to do it, and what the fundamentals and what gives value and all that. I'm very open to teaching people that as I learn myself.
Look forward to joining one of your classes. Hopefully you can do a class or maybe a session, a Twitter session. I think that would be awesome.
Guys always telling me when masterclass.
Indeed, yes. When can we have a masterclass, Kevin?
I do not know, but I don't know. I would have to be roped in or dragged in by the tail of my coat.
So Kevin, for people who want to learn about your work, who want to purchase your art, where can they find you?
Okay, I am most active on Twitter. My Twitter name is just Kiggs or Kevin. If you search Kevin Kiggs, I'm sure you'll find it. Yeah, I'm most active on Twitter, and I have links to all my art there. The Faces collection, which is still available, and right now, because Ethereum is low, they're actually very cheap. Okay, not very cheap, quite cheap.
Yeah, please state which platforms can people find your work on?
Twitter is my main platform. Also Instagram. My page is kiggs.exe. And what else? And then afterwards, you can find my art on OpenSea. The Faces collection is on OpenSea, and the GM collection is on object.com or bjkt.com on the Tezos blockchain.
Great. Yeah, I think, and with that, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed talking to you. We can't wait to, check out your future collections, upcoming collections.
Thank you.